Well, good morning and welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk. And thank you so much for joining us this Friday morning. We're glad you're here. Shriner, thanks for hanging out behind the board while Pat George is out.
He's on a cruise.
That's awesome.
You got to figure Cinco de Mayo hit him pretty hard.
Yeah. Leo Kane, Farrell Engineering and Inspections.
I have some great news for you at the top of the hour. Not the top of this part of the hour, but the top of the hour, as in like the 50-minute mark. I've got some awesome news to share with everyone.
At the end of the show? All right.
That's the tease. That is the tease.
And I think Adam Talley will be trickling along sometime a little bit later today.
Yeah, I've got some great news to share with the listening audience. So make sure you don't go anywhere. And if you're listening online on the YouTubes or the Streamcast, make sure you smash the like and subscribe button because we're only here because of listeners like you.
That's right. And we have a really good, I have to say, like the people that we work with are amazing. Most of them are referred past clients. We get some radio people that sprinkle in there every now and again, and they also refer other people to us. So it's pretty awesome. Let's talk about the new listings and what this market looks like, and then we'll chat about what we're seeing in the field. Sound good?
Sounds great. So I have to say, they say the real estate market in the nation's on a decline. They say things like people can't find homes, people aren't selling homes, people don't want to move to areas. They keep saying these things, but when I look at the Tampa market, I look at these Tampa numbers, we are just solidly in exactly where we were about a year ago, about 2 years ago. Tampa looks still like a prime hot market that people want to live and work here.
It's funny you say that. I'm going to actually have Adelisa print the other stuff that I sent you with the outline because I did the quarter one look over this year from last year and then March. It ties into the numbers and what we're going to talk about today.
I mean, prices are up, listings are down, and pending contracts are up. I mean, we're looking at that same level where year over year, we got to a point where we barely had any inventory. We got to the point where people were placing utter crap online, like their MLS posting would be a
house no one would buy.
Yeah, a dog biting someone, like the mailman, in the listing, and that listing would be gone in a week. We're heading back in that direction now.
Well, it's interesting because in the numbers, and we'll have a peek at that again, and we'll go through the data today and then also some of the past data because it ties into what we're going to chat about. But the absorption rate went from a half a month supply to still under 2 months supply.
We eventually got to 3.5, almost 4 months. We did get there. We got to a point where we did see a slowdown.
It was like fourth quarter. We saw a little lull.
And I think what ended up happening with if I can talk money for a second, is
Well, how about money talk?
Well, money talk. If we can money talk money for a second. We have to think we have the Fed using the old methodology and the old mentality of curbing inflation by rising interest rates. Not taking into account one of the key factors is people are still going to spend money. So what's happened is people got used to the rising interest rates and people know that higher rates are coming. So what they've done is they've created a demand. They've actually created an imaginary demand for people to spend money faster now because they know money spent now is cheaper than money spent tomorrow. So from that standpoint, trying to raise rates to fight inflation is actually going opposite to how they want. If they actually want to do something smart, they'd probably lower rates by a quarter point. People would be like, well, rates are on the way down. I'm going to save money and not spend money because the next time in the future the Feds meet, they're going to continue to lower the rates. And that's the opposite thinking of what they're currently doing of raising rates to curb spending.
Well, I will add to that, Leo, because the Feds have said they think they're going to cool the rate hiking, right? 10 consecutive rate hikes. It was like the most ever in history.
And it didn't do what they wanted to do. They actually wanted to curb spending, but this generation of people spending right now.
That's exactly what I was going to say, I think.
Is the same as we're looking at like when revolving credit came around in the 1960s, it led to the collapse in the 70s, and so many people went into debt. We're kind of in that.
I think we're going to see that now. You're right.
We're seeing another spike in crippling debt. And I mean, you do have...
And let me add this, and then you chime in on it and tell me what you think. Because remember, I have older, like my young ones are older, right? So my youngest two are literally 17 and 20, still live at home. The other two are out on their own. So I think there's a whole generation of these younger adults, right, that are in their mid to young 20s and or teenagers that are possibly working, but they're still living at home. So they really don't have any responsibility or debt or anything. So all the money that they make, they spend on whatever.
It's
like
disposable income.
I can't tell you how many times I look on there and I see DoorDash, right, from the younger kids, and how many times they eat out, and I'm like, we don't do that. Like, we just don't. We don't do that.
Well, I mean, when you have multi-generational
So that's where
living,
people are spending money.
when you have multi-generational living in one household, your amount of disposable income greatly increases for certain members of that family. Because if you've got your baby boomers or your Gen Xers who are actually the homeowners, and then they have their millennials or Gen Zs that are basically renting a room, their disposable income isn't going to be curbed by the Fed raising inflation points.
Well, a lot of the millennials are saying they're one of the biggest generations of home buyers outside of boomers, but they're competing with boomers that have all the cash. So, it's a little different. But so Beryl, you guys do design services as well on plans. And you guys are actually revamping plans for us. Are you seeing a lot of stuff with in-law suites? Because I know you're designing that same thing for me.
We see it comes in waves. So if you have a detached garage, we see people wanting to put a second story on it in areas that are non-conforming.
So you can't really easily do that either, right? Because of the footer, it depends on how it's poured.
You can pretty much easily add.
Okay.
I mean, if you have a footer, a lot of detached garages are just a slab with a frame around it. But if you have a real footer, or you can do there are ways around it. However, if you can turn that detached garage into a garage / second story, or street parking is so prevalent now, they're just saying, hey, just convert me. I mean, that's what I did. My backyard detached garage, I can't even get to it from the alley, quote unquote. So we've turned it.
Because it's always blocked?
Yeah. We turned it into an in-law suite.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you use that for guests or whatever?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Whatever. We'll go with whatever.
You have the opportunity to let your guests stay in there.
No, I don't. There's someone living in it.
Oh, okay. Well,
Whatever.
But I think you're going to see more of that between people needing to offset their own housing costs, right? St. Pete, we saw doing that. We were talking about it on the air, and then some. So I just think you're going to see more of that.
I would expect so, because we already saw the boom of, you had COVID, which opened employers' eyes to a work-from-home model. Some companies it works better than others. The typical ones you see on TV, the I hate to use the word white collar, but the white collar office professional type positions, and that's in reference to the color of their shirt, not skin color.
Right.
But basically with those type of people in those kind of settings, a lot of those were remote work from home for a long time, and now they're going to a hybrid approach where it's 50-50 or 40-60, where they're partially working from home and they're partially in the office, which means that employers are forcing home buyers and homeowners to convert a room into some kind of workspace.
Well, we saw that after COVID.
Yeah, we're still seeing it.
I mean, that sparked the demand for people needing to move because they don't have a work-at-home space.
It destroyed the tiny home mentality. The whole I'm going to live in the smallest space possible got thrown out the window, and people were no longer spending 12 hours a day at work.
Because you can't leave.
Because work is now their house.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I had one where an attorney, literally her closet and the master bedroom was her office because she had kids and they needed a quiet place, and that was like the only space. So that was part of their move, was in that.
I mean, when you have hers and hers walk-in closets, because if you're married, you don't have his and hers walk-in closets. They're both hers and hers. But if you have hers and hers walk-in closet, she might convert one to an office for herself.
Do you have a drawer, Leo?
Oh, it's funny. So on
you
our
fold
house,
up all your barrel shorts and your pants in
I
your
know
drawer?
she listens, but in our house there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms. There are probably 6 closets, and I have access to half of one closet.
Oh, my goodness.
But I have a file cabinet.
All right. Well,
That doubles as an armoire or whatever.
I thought your wife did all the rental clothes.
She does.
That's you. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have a history of stuff.
Yeah. Trust me. I know about the history of stuff.
The history of stuff.
Really quick, let's run through the market data for this week, and then we're going to talk about how that stacks up in prior quarters, because we have quarter 1 and March data. I was hoping, last month would be ready, but it won't be ready till next week. So we'll talk about it then. But the number of new listings is coming in this week at 701, down a little from 765 last week. The number of solds is coming in at 660. Woo, shot down sharply from 1,000 last week. Had a weird little spike. And the pendings are coming in this week at 993. Exactly the same as last week.
Yeah,
isn't that odd?
Odd.
Yeah.
But if you want to know more about these numbers, you got 813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775.
When we come back,
sure you smash that like and subscribe button. We want to hear from you. And when we come back, we'll be selling your home faster than top dollar, the power of comprehensive marketing.
Back in a moment. Stick around. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, watching Leo fight with his phone.
I forgot to turn the recording off when we went to commercial break,
that's all
so
right.
I had to at least flip it so I know where to start the next
A
segment.
little edit there.
A little edit.
Well, let's jump into these March 2023 data, right? Since we were talking about this, let's just look how this stacks up back to back. And I was going to say this at the last segment, but essentially, look at one of the biggest things on this, Leo. Look at this. The median time to contract is up almost 417%.
Well, we've gone from 6 days to
Yeah.
31 days. I mean, that's pretty.
Last year in March, it took 6 days to sell a house to get a contract. And now we're about 31 days for the median, right? All the stuff right in the middle. We were about a half month absorption rate, 0.6, coming in at 1.8.
That's still not bad. I mean, we're below 2 months.
Still very much a seller's market. I've been telling people that. And here's the thing, like when you look at the closed sales, we're down about 15%, but in March in 4 counties for single family homes, we still had almost 4,000 sold. And the cash buyers is down significantly, almost 34%.
Well,
So out of those 4,000, about a quarter of them paid cash.
so if our cash buyers are down, cash buyers tend to be more of what, your hedge fund people, things of that nature. So what kind of
It could be any of it. It could be a foreign national paying cash. It could be a hedge fund. It could be
money.
a mom and pop. It's cash.
It's money.
Yeah.
No, it's actual money, not
Yeah.
cash. It's usually investors.
Yes, of
Yes.
some sort.
So what does that stat tell us if that's down?
That they're waiting.
What are they waiting for?
A little bit of a shift and some opportunity. I think they're waiting on inflation to go up and opportunity, basically, in a nutshell. So this is interesting, though. Look at this. So even though our marketing time took longer, we've sold less homes, and our absorption rate is a little bit higher. It was extreme, right, at a 2-week supply of homes. It's the median sale price is still up 1.3%. So back to what you were saying.
People are still spending money.
People are still buying here in Florida. They're still
Definitely.
spending money on houses.
Not only are they spending money, they're spending money here.
So 390 was that number last year. 395 is the median sales price this year. So just some interesting little data. If you ever want to take a look at this, happy to send it to you. It does spit out 4 counties. We can send it by zip code. There's a lot of different.
It's the 4-county area. Do not forget about Hernando County.
Yes.
I'm talking to you, Hernando County people, Brooksville, Spring
which
Hill.
our signal reaches up there, by the way.
Our signal, I guarantee you, there's people right now tending to their chickens, milking their cows, listening to us on the radio right now.
813-377-2775. If you'd like to take a look at the monthly market detail, a lot of information goes into these reports, and they're pretty cool to look at. Even if you're not a data person, you'll probably appreciate the report.
I doubt that. You have to, if you're a data person, you're going to love this report.
Oh, yeah,
If you're not a
this is
data
your
person,
jam.
you're just not going to.
Even if you look at the first page, it's pretty fascinating, don't you think?
Even the first page is 2 charts. Two
Okay.
charts, a graph, a map, and a whole bunch of numbers.
I don't see myself as having any C, but apparently I have some. 813-377-2775. That's our off-air number if you would like to call or text, get some real estate information, advice, or get a copy of the report. We're happy to give it to you.
So I have a question for you. This next thing is in quotes. Is this a new book you've written, Selling Your Home Faster or for Top Dollar, The Power of a Comprehensive Marketing Plan? Is
No.
that a book you've written?
It's not. I probably could write
Is that
it.
a book you're going to write? I mean, why is this in quotes?
It's not on my list. That's the title of the show this week.
Oh, that should be
So
the title of your next book.
maybe the third one. I've got a couple more I'm going to write.
Where are you with your next book? It's been like, what, 3
It's
years,
been a while.
4 years?
I haven't even produced the first one on Audible. I have to do that.
4 years?
No, it's not been 4 years.
Since you produced a book? I was at your book
It's
launch
been almost
party.
2. It's not been 4 years.
It was pre-COVID.
Was it pre-COVID? No, it was after COVID.
It was
wasn't
pre-COVID.
it? Okay, so 2020. No, it was after COVID.
It was 2019.
No, it was after COVID.
I need someone in production to fact check us.
Okay, we'll double check because I don't remember. Time is just
It was
escaping me.
pre-COVID, I think. And you haven't done it in Audible yet?
No,
Why
I
don't
have
you
to do it.
If you only had a radio studio.
I know. I have to just, make the time to get over there and do it.
So what happens when you take a book and put it in Audible? You basically just read it with a dry British accent?
No. There's a whole prerequisite. They put all this information in there that you have to follow in order to get the book launched on Audible. Like the format, the clarity, there's a whole bunch of things they look at.
I think you should be able to handle that.
I can definitely do it.
Okay,
yeah.
so we got your not the next book, but the book after that. It's going to be Selling Your Home Faster and for Top Dollar, The Power of a Comprehensive Marketing Plan.
No, I have ideas for 2 more books before that.
Then, okay, so let's talk about your next book then.
I'm not ready to, I haven't even started it. I'm not ready. I'd have to pick a launch date and work on it like I did the last
So
time.
you're ready to talk about a book that's going to be written 2 books from now.
I never even said book. That's you. You're saying that.
We're just going to say your new name is going to be R.R. Martin around here.
I don't know who that is, so don't make fun of me.
He's the guy.
Game of Thrones guy.
Has yet to publish a book.
I don't watch it. I don't know anything about that.
We've just been waiting a long time for one of his books to come out.
Oh my gosh. All right. So
I don't know how to read, so none of his books have pictures, so it's fine.
The purpose of this outline, though, is remember we had all those new listings that we signed and we launched on the market last week. All of them sold.
That was my big news for the top of the hour.
Well, you have more to talk about.
I was going to say that.
Well, good thing I started sponsoring your sponsoring of the reading of the listings.
Look who finally rolled in at the
gangbusters.
bottom of the
That
hour.
is why they all sold, is because we have a double sponsorship on the reading of the listings on the air, and that's the sole reason why they
Yes.
sold.
No,
Without
it
us,
is not.
people wouldn't know about the open houses.
It's true.
And no one would show up, and you'd still have all these listings.
I wish I could tell you that's true, Leo, but that's not the way it works.
That is exactly how it works. How many listings did you have last week?
I would beg to say that it's more along the lines of our marketing plan that we follow that helps sell the home so quickly.
Why don't you? Okay, try and convince me by explaining your marketing plan. The comprehensive marketing plan.
There's 43 points. We don't have enough time to talk about all of them. But I will tell you one of the things that I get very often, and these little details matter, right? So I'm going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So the photos, and I look at a lot of data and stuff outside of what we look at here, right? So you probably heard me talk about it before, but every year NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, they put out a report, the profile of a home buyer and the profile of a home seller. Have you looked at that?
The NAR report?
Yes.
I've seen it.
Okay. So they put all sorts of data in there, including do people use a realtor? Is it a realtor they've used before? Would they use them again? They put all this data in there, including how people discovered a property, what made them inquire further. There's just a lot of information in there. And the bottom line is that data says that 96% of buyers start their home search online. And they will inquire further about a property based on the photos and the information they see online. So between the photos of the property and the listing description, those are going to be the things that highly help the listing succeed, right?
That's how she sold that fence a couple weeks ago.
That is how she sold the fence. However, they're going to put in initial criteria of their dollar parameters, so that starts. Right.
It has to be priced correctly, right? So I don't think she printed this, but it's one of the first things on our marketing plan.
The 43-point marketing plan?
Correct. One of the first things on there is we meet with the seller and evaluate how their home is unique, what it's bringing to the table, and pricing it correctly. There's an art in that, right? There's a reason why the median time to contract
31
on
days.
these is 31 days, and we didn't take 31 days to sell our listings. And it's not because it's underpriced, it's priced correctly.
So, question.
And we've got a lot of data to support that.
Do you find that your sellers are realistic in their expectations?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll give you an
more
example.
realistic people than unrealistic
So
people.
my
True.
fence listing, right, that you're clicking on, part of the data that we look at, and they get a weekly marketing report with a ton of information, and this tells them how their listing is performing, okay? We pull a ton of metrics and information from the backside of MLS based on showings we've had, based on people that have marked it as a favorite, based on data that we get from Realtor.com, based on data we get from Zillow, some of the major players. We get all this information, and it tells us how many eyeballs have looked at it. We look at the other comps in the market, and more importantly, we follow those. So this is what other agents don't do, okay? So when we meet with a seller, that's a snapshot at that moment in time. We're looking to see, okay, what could this house sell for? We'll look at active, pending, sold within a 1 mile radius, preferably in that neighborhood, just like that subject property, right? So when we look at that data, that's a snapshot of that moment. We determine what's a fair market price, and that's where we list it. Now, sometimes that launch time in between takes a little longer, right? Then they don't always list right away the next week. Sometimes there's some preparation time in that. So the fence listing, for example, that you guys are talking about,
The $500,000 fence?
looking in that neighborhood, because that property was in Ruskin, right? The median time to contract was substantially higher on that one. So in that neighborhood, it took more than 90 days to get a contract on almost everything in there. Okay. So we listed for 500. We tested that price for about a week. The seller said, I'd like to sell my home quickly. I would like to reduce the price to 475 because I don't want to sit as long as those other listings have set. So they reduced the price to 475, and that helped continue showings and basically spike the offer. But we literally chase the buyers and their agents for feedback, and we get that. And if they don't buy our home, we find out why. What other home did they buy? Is that anything we can control or change? Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775.
Welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm Adam Talley with Talley Insurance. Finally joining us for, I guess, the second half of our show.
What is your
here.
deal? I'm glad you didn't start the show.
I know, right? Now, I will say this is my last time here for the month of May. I'll be busy, busy, busy.
Okay.
So
That's why we need to discuss the importance of working with real estate agents who have proven track records of creating effective marketing plans.
we do. Well, and I would think on the selling side too, and you would, I think you either emailed or texted me earlier this week about flood insurance. And on the selling side, probably what would make a realistic buyer if they're in a flood zone would be willingness to let seller would be willingness to let the buyer assume their flood policy.
Yes, that's a good one.
Because especially after the new rating changes, if you aren't grandfathered in, those rates are. You saw it on that one that was off of West Shore.
In South
remember?
Tampa, yeah. And South Tampa, the one on Juanita.
Yeah, Juanita's. Yeah.
Quick question for you.
Okay, quick answer.
Along those lines.
Yep.
There's no risk or there's no reason why a seller should not let a buyer assume their flood policy, is there?
I couldn't think of one.
I can't either.
They're not going to get a refund back, but
they get a proration back from the buyer.
If they want to, yeah, if they should. Like I don't know a reason why they wouldn't want to.
So when it changes hand, do they jack it up, or they still get grandfathered on that lower one?
They still get grandfathered in.
Wow.
So the way it would work, and then if they didn't want to, like for instance, so if you had a buyer that was like, well, I don't want to have to work with this agent over here, you would really only have to do it for the remainder of that term. Because then once you get to your renewal, you can do what's called a rollover, and you can roll over from, that agent to the agent that you prefer. And then the flood policy stays the same.
Yeah, so anytime a seller is in a flood zone and you have a flood policy, transfer that to the buyer.
Yes.
So the fence house has flood in the back because it's on the water.
Yeah.
All right.
So that would be my suggestion. If you're a
I didn't
seller,
think about that because I don't get involved in that part of it often.
Well, and then like the other issue that you have is when you have people that they're, a corporation like Open Door or something bought that house, and now you're trying to buy a house from Open Door, and they don't have flood insurance on it because they're self-insuring. So now that's another, added cost onto everything else.
That's a good tip of the week.
Yeah,
That's
this
a
is
really
tip of the
good
week.
one.
All right, good to see you guys. I'm out of here. No.
That's a good one.
That
It really is.
really good. And it's important for tips like this because this is May. May is sweeps. Sweeps impact our ratings. So make sure you're hitting the like button if you want to keep us going here on Tampa Home Talk.
Speaking of flood, I saw something pretty interesting this week on an appraisal. I sold a new build that's closing this month, and the buyer asked me. She said, "It's weird. I saw that I'm in a flood zone." I thought, that's weird. The builders don't usually build in a flood zone. So I was looking at her. I said, "Send me your appraisal. Let me look at it. Let me look at what you're talking about." So I pull it up, and the FEMA maps from 2014. So I'm like, that doesn't even sound right. So let me go to FEMA. Let me put in the address. Let me look at it. Several revisions. Start looking. There's a LOMA letter in there.
Which is a land area map adjustment.
So that's probably better for you guys to explain, but I knew it didn't seem right, so I went in there and found it. I said, pretty sure you're pulled out of a flood zone. Here's what I see. Call your insurance company, have them verify all this sort of stuff I'm telling you. You're pretty experienced with the LOMA stuff.
Yeah. Basically, what the LOMA does is if you're in a flood zone, you can get a land area map adjustment, which says you're no longer in the flood zone. And there's certain criteria you have to meet. You'll have to have a flood elevation certificate done. A surveyor who's also a professional engineer are the types of people who actually do this type of work. It's really helpful if you want to get yourself pulled out of a flood zone for any number of reasons. I mean, I think with
What's the criteria and how can people do that?
I think this would be a great topic to have a
For a whole
surveyor on.
show. I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think-
Real quick, what would that service cost a client if they wanted to do that?
Since that's not one we offer, it'd be a great question to ask a surveyor.
Well, what do you
We'll dig that up.
average if you're?
Is that an environmental engineer that does that?
Pretty much. It's a civil or environmental engineer that also is a surveyor. These are all great questions. I mean,
do you know one that we could bring on the show?
I probably do.
Okay. Well,
You dig, I'll dig. Let's
that
find
to
one.
you.
That's a good topic. It
Yeah.
is.
I actually know several people who do it because I occasionally sign off on some of the documents after I've reviewed them because you need a professional engineer on it. However, I don't get into their pricing and whatnot.
So some of the things that I've seen is something as silly as either the back corner of the property was in a flood zone, so they've mapped the whole thing a flood zone. So a LOMA letter would pull that property out of a flood zone very often.
That's what we mostly see when you have like a larger property where a piece of it, which is not built on, will never be built on, is possibly in a utility easement. That one piece is in a flood zone, and the rest of the property isn't. That's usually where your LOMAs end up being best.
The other thing too is on these new builds, they bring in so much fill dirt to bring these areas up, and it's based on the base flood elevation, flood insurances. So oftentimes, these huge areas basically are not in a flood zone by the time they build them up.
Yeah, and occasionally you get counties that make the builders sign no fill affidavits, which means they can't bring in additional fill, and that's when you end up with these subdivisions in Riverview and Valrico that have these huge mounds at the back of the subdivision because that's just where they pushed all the garbage that they can't get rid of.
Like really trash or
It's part of the demucking process, so yeah, it's garbage, organic garbage.
Now, before we get too far off the
Well,
topic,
we're way
on
off
this stuff-
topic. We're supposed to be
I
talking
know,
about a
we
43
are.
marketing point.
she's talking
time.
about the flood zones. and,
sometimes it rolls like that.
What we see a lot too, and like I'll have realtors that'll call me, and the MLS isn't always right. Okay.
Adam, it's real tour, not really tours. It's real tour.
Realtors.
Real tour, like a tour of a property. Real tour.
Realtors. Anyways, so the MLS isn't always right, and the FEMA website isn't always right. So if you go on the FEMA website, the mapping site where you'd put in the address and it pulls up the blue map and all this other stuff, I find plenty of times where that might say that you're in an A zone, right, which would be a high risk flood zone. But when I go to run a quote, it's coming back as an X,
which is a low risk flood zone.
which is low risk.
Is that because of the revisions?
It could just be. I've just always found the map on FEMA, the interactive map, to be wildly inaccurate.
So where do you go to get information?
I
that's
just
different?
run a quote.
Okay.
I start a quote through a NFIP carrier. We go through Progressive just because they have their system's the easiest to use and they have good customer service.
And they have the best commercials.
But I just go through, and then once it shows an X, they give you a flood zone determination. And that has, Department of Homeland Security stamped at the top, everything else like that. You send that to your lender. Boom, I'm now in an X, and there's no issues.
Well,
Is that part of your 43-point marketing plan?
no,
No?
not on there.
Not knowing what flood zone the property's in?
Well, we're going to look at all of those things.
I would
Part of how we
assume
set it up.
one of her points is having a network of established professionals in other areas.
I don't even think that's on there, but we could probably
we could probably bump this up to 44 points.
We could make it 144, I'm sure.
Well, why don't you discuss how each element of the plan works together to create a cohesive and effective marketing strategy?
So that's actually it's a perfect add-on to the show, Leo, because we've talked about this before, right? How we'll sign a listing, but we're not launching sometimes for a week or month or two. Mm-hmm. I've had listings that don't actually launch for a whole year, and we have to sign a new listing agreement. It's entirely up to the seller and their timeline. Part of that is preparing them so that they can show the best and that they're prepared to succeed. So not only pricing it correctly, helping them declutter, helping them get things where they need to go so the property shows well. Sometimes that's bringing in staging items. Sometimes it's removing things. A lot of times it's a deep clean. You'd be surprised how many people do not clean their house regularly, and there's dust on the baseboard, so we have to talk about that.
If we were to sign up with you, am I like getting a binder that's going to have these 43 points and just like checklists, and I can see like a critical path methodology schedule here?
No, engineers like you would love that, so I'm probably going to print it and give it to you because you're going to look at all those little things. I will tell you it's more a part of like I just do it, but that's like our documented internal checklist, if that makes sense.
It does.
So all of our behind the scenes support, they do all those things in terms of marketing them on social media, advertising them on the air. I mean, those are some of the points on the 43-point mark.
Now, do you put things on Zillow, or once you put it on the MLS, Zillow pulls it?
Not exactly. So the way it works is when we put it in the MLS, we actually have the option to syndicate that listing to other sites.
Okay.
And so syndication is how those properties get on Zillow. So if we put no across the board, it's not going to any of them. It's only going to be in the MLS. And that does happen. I had a seller one time that felt like someone was going to steal her identity if it was shared across the other sites, and she didn't want it on more than 300 other sites. She didn't want it on Zillow. She didn't want it on Realtor.com. She only wanted an agent to sell it.
Wait till I tell her about the property appraisers.
Well, I said
Yeah.
you do and I tried to convince her that wasn't true. It was not going to happen. It just wasn't true, right? And that it was actually going to take longer to get her home sold if she didn't syndicate to their sites, and it would probably significantly limit the exposure she would have, which could mean that she's theoretically getting less for the property. Now, we did sell it through a realtor. We did. It's more of like your old school marketing before Zillow existed. That's how we had to market that property.
You mailed people in the
We
town?
mailed.
Is there a cost associated with syndicating it?
No, yes and no, not really.
Okay.
So
It's an opportunity cost
not
to some
really.
extent.
I mean, so here's the thing. Zillow and sites like this, they make their money and they've built their powerhouse sharing data that realtors own, right? So like all this stuff, the photos I purchased, they're mine, I own them. The listing description I took time to write and actually sell the property, that's my intellectual property. I wrote it, right? You'd be surprised how many other agents rip me off when they resell either the same house later or a similar house in the neighborhood. They'll steal part of my listing description. It happens, or all of it sometimes. And I have to say, no, we're not going to do that.
We're gonna plagiarize.
That's anyway. So, but it happens, and I was a point I was going to make, and I can't remember.
I don't know. You're getting there, though.
You were talking
I
about
remember.
what Zillow does or
Yes,
doesn't do.
that's so back
cost-
to that.
the cost
so,
associated with it.
So they make their money when they basically sell leads back to agents. So I'm not a Zillow agent. I'm not somebody that buys Zillow. Now, Zillow in recent years has truly partnered with a Zillow agent. So we used to make fun of them and call them Zillow agents, but like literally some of these companies have signed agreements with Zillow, and it's
Zillow's the broker?
well, Zillow technically is a broker now, even though in the beginning they said they were never going to be. They are a brokerage. And so now, because they're a brokerage, they actually take that data when they get a lead and that sort of stuff, and they sell it. And they were doing the iBuyer model, right, for the listings and stuff. So they're selling that data to these brokerages at a very hefty referral fee. I think it's like 30 or 35% per deal. And they want it on the next two deals that client makes. So it's pretty. I'm like, that's like getting in bed with the devil. I am not doing that. So, but that's the Zillow agents. That's what they do. So if you think you're going to get the same customer service with a Zillow agent as somebody like me, it's just not going to be the same experience.
I do have a lot of respect for a company that can take public information, repackage it,
Yeah.
and then sell advertising for people who come to them to find public information.
Well, let's be clear about that. It's not public information. Some of it is the stuff they pull from tax rolls, but the data they're getting from realtors like me, that's not public information. That was voluntarily shared. We probably should talk more about this when we come back after the break.
813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. And then we have the Barrel Project Engineering reading of the open houses.
We do have some new listings
Sponsored
coming
by Tally Insurance.
that were not here last week, and those will be, 2 of them will be open this weekend. Stick around.
Welcome home. This is Leo Kane with Barrel Project Engineering, about to proudly display the listings in the open houses.
Yeah, let's
For the
do that real quick, and then we'll go back to Adam.
As brought to you by Tally Insurance.
Yes, so Barrel Project Engineering is...
Madewell Group and Keller Williams had no hand in this.
They
right?
do
At
not.
all.
So this is the Barrel
I'm
Project...
so glad you guys are going to be hosting my open houses on Saturday. I can't wait.
We're just hosting the announcements of the open houses.
Yeah, yes,
No,
exactly.
no. You got to do all the work, not part of the work. Not just the fun
I
part of the work.
guarantee you that these open houses that Barrel Project Engineering is sponsoring the announcement of, and that Tally Insurance
It's sponsoring the announcement. The sponsoring of the announcement.
are going to
You
be
better
off
show
the
up-
chain.
You better show up with some snacks and some drinks.
So we have one in
It's the
Carrollwood.
balloon budget.
We have one in Carrollwood. Balloons get expensive.
I know.
5018 Landsman Avenue. This
This
is
is a good one.
Carrollwood Meadows. It's a 3-2 in Carrollwood. It's $350,000 open house. It checks off all the right buttons. You're in Carrollwood. You're a 3-2. You're $350,000.
Investors are going to love this one because they could literally put a few bucks in it and probably flip it
Pool, no
for
pool.
100,000 higher. No pool. Plenty of room to put in a pool.
How close are we to the golf course?
Close. It's not far.
It's Carrollwood. I mean,
Yeah.
this checks off all the right boxes. You're in
very
Carrollwood. You're in Carrollwood's Meadow. You're on Landsman Ave. So 5018 Landsman Ave, Carrollwood Meadows, 3-2, $350,000. We're actually below median price on this one.
Yes.
Oh, we are, yes.
Yes.
But it needs, the kitchen's original, the bathrooms are original, so
How
we're
old
priced
is
correctly.
what is our date of birth on this house here?
That's a good question. I don't remember.
Carrollwood, late 90s?
I didn't jot that
Early-
down,
at least
probably.
late 80s, early 90s.
Late 80s and early
I'd
90s.
say 9. Yeah, late 80s, yeah. Probably.
Yeah, late 80s. So it needs some updates.
Date of birth. I don't know what's wrong with me today.
So would this be a good candidate for a 203K or a Fannie Mae home style?
absolutely. It sure would.
So what those are loans that you can actually build your renovation price right into the loan and get it handled under one bill.
Now the
Still not seeing a lot of sellers take that, though, by the way.
well the other issue the issue that you'll have with that though is your property insurance. With doing big renovations, if your agent is asking the right questions and you're answering them honestly, you could have some big,
Shouldn't you have a builder's
insurance issue.
risk policy during that?
That's what I would recommend.
You
but
have to have a builder's risk policy if you're renoing and you're not living in it.
Right.
But yeah, exactly. But you would not be able to live in it. So I
Right.
feel like some people get these. They're like, oh well, I'll do the kitchen first, and then I'll do one of the bathrooms, and it's like, well,
You're better off to do that on your own once you're in there.
You can either live in there and do it piece by piece, or you can not live in it and do construction, but you can't do both.
So, Leo, you could do the renovation loan on that, but I don't recommend that because that would be financing debt, right, for renovations. I think it would be better because the house is habitable. You could live in it, and I would renovate one area at a time, like you're talking about, and not roll that into debt.
The 203K loan is a great product if you want to have your dream home from the get-go.
Listen, a lot of people in this market want it right now, and they will absolutely do that.
I'm
Right.
going to stay in my professional lane because I can't add to that.
There's pros and cons to each, but
I'm telling you how I would do it. I know that's not how everyone would do it.
no one in this
And
room.
you're not an engineer, so you can't be right on this.
No one in this room has crippling debt, and to put a $100,000 renovation on top of a $350,000 loan where you pay it off over 27 and a half years, I can see your point.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
going to become an inspector.
Anyway, it's a fantastic property. I think the neighbor wants to buy it already, so we'll see.
And I'm not saying you need to put $100,000 into this home. I'm saying that's just generally what you could with a 203K or a home style. Make sure you talk to your lender about that opportunity.
Well, with kitchen, bathrooms, floors, if they throw in a pool, you're
If you wanted-
over 100.
Yeah, and if you throw in a pool, we've seen that pools by themselves are 60 to 70.
Minimum.
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 Yes.
Minimum.
So it's probably closer to 100.
For all, if you want it to like be that outdoor, experience, it's going to be six
Over.
figures.
Speaking of an outdoor experience, I have 1 acre of new carpet for a sale in Plant City. That's the way this is written. 1 acre of new carpet.
It's over an acre. No. So this is a manufactured home, 2007, but it's in Plant City,
It's in
and
Plant
it looks
City.
great.
So I have to ask a question. This is 3612.
And we can do a normal policy for that too.
Okay, good.
So
I have
with
a-
replacement costs.
I have a question on you. It's 3612 Roderick Lane, Plant City.
Mm-hmm.
It's a manufactured home that is 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2,200 square feet. Is that like a triple wide? I mean, how big of a?
I don't know. It's pretty big.
That's pretty big for a manufactured
big.
home.
It's probably extra long. It's
Well,
probably 65
manufactured
by
home. Hold on.
28.
Manufactured
or 30.
home is not a mobile home, so that's what you're thinking. So
Yeah.
manufactured home is where they build
Build that.
it in a warehouse and then they bring it and they assemble it on site. So it's more along the lines of a log cabin.
See, I thought
right?
that was more modular than
That's a modular.
That's modular. That's how I would
Yeah,
classify
manufactured
it
homes
insurance-wise.
are the ones that are built on site. So they'll come in pieces and they'll manufacture it on site by connecting the pieces.
correct.
Yeah,
It's modular.
that's modular.
Manufactured is just a nice way to say mobile.
Yeah. The
I don't know. I think okay.
I've had to testify in this arena before,
Okay.
so.
It's how it would be classified on an insurance basis as well.
Yes, we import all that stuff from public record, so it's whatever.
So
public record says it
3612
is.
Roderick Lane, Plant City, 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. What is this, separate garages? In one of the garages has its own bathroom. Is that detached?
Yes, it's
Awesome.
detached. There's a shed. There's all kinds of separate little areas that are fenced, which is perfect for animals. Which is
Plant
the person
City.
that buys that's going to want
Yeah,
that.
this is a great property, and this property is only $250,000. So you get yourself a main home, you get yourself separate garages,
Workshop.
a
Sounds like.
workshop, a shed.
Yeah.
So that's where my comps are showing, but I can tell you, I would not be surprised if that home sells closer to 300. I would not be surprised.
That's what I would think.
I would think
And-
that too. With
and
this, with all
dirt
this
is
extra stuff.
Dirt's expensive right now.
Even in Plant City, too.
Everywhere,
Yeah.
dirt, substantial dirt, no HOA is expensive.
So you can see part of the sponsored team out there. I think
Don't
I'll-
even go there
I
with
think
me.
I'll let Keller Williams actually handle the open house this
Oh,
weekend.
will you now?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's so nice.
11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come see them at 5018 Landsman Avenue in Carrollwood for your awesome quintessential Carrollwood home that you can make your dream home with some renovations.
And we have one more great little one in Brandon, not being held open because it's tenant occupied, but let's talk about that one.
We'll talk about that one after I replug 3612 Roderick Lane in Plant City. 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms on an acre of land with several detached buildings, one of which has a garage and a bathroom in it. So when you have to sleep on the couch, you can sleep on the comfortable couch in your he-she cave.
Yeah, they had people actually that were living in that, not renting in it, but sort of like what you said. It's definitely not permitted.
So it comes
but
with squatters.
Yeah.
No, they're out.
Okay, so, and also we have one other property that's not an open home, which is 1037 Bridlewood Lane in Brandon, Florida. This is a 3-1, 275,000, but it's got a tenant occupied, so this is a rental property.
Cutesy, really clean. Yeah, it's a rental. All right, to go back to your Ziller question because we have less than a minute.
Oh, photos. Realistic photos. That has to be part of our 43-point plan, right?
So yeah, I mean, here's the thing. National Association of Realtors has a code of ethics, and in that code of ethics, it says that you may not. It's not exactly verbatim, but you have to market a true depiction of the property. You
Right.
cannot. They cannot be
No false advertising.
Yes,
No-
exactly. So, in a nutshell, we share the data with the other places. They help market and sell it. They make money to do that. Seller gets additional exposure. We're okay with it. It's definitely changed the rules of real estate.
So I'll see sometimes where it's like a 2010 home and it looks like they had it just designed like you would see on a builder website. But if you want to know about the 43-point plan, 813-377-2775. 44 points by the time you text us.
Adam just messed it all up. We'll be back next week. Bye.